Yes. In the previous class, we were discussing about the advantages of worm gear and how a worm gear actually functions. So, as seen previously, uh, let me just give you that animation again. That you have a screw, a helical screw, which rotates on its axis. It's made of a harder material when compared to the material of the gear itself. We have seen the reason for that also. So the harder material with a screw rotates and it traverses through the edges of the tooth of the gear itself. The gear, it resembles a spur gear. It is almost a spur gear. Some of the differences being the teeth are slightly inclined and also the teeth profile is not straight. As you can see, it has a kind of a curvature. The reason being it has to accommodate the rotating screw on its side. So this is the only combination that can take care of it. And the reason that we have a harder and a softer material combination is that every helical groove will have its own loading, okay, own size, and you cannot fit uh, any gear to any worm wheel, okay. Any worm cannot be fitted to just any worm wheel. Uh, and once you fit it, the harder material will impinge on the softer material. Some edges may get worn out and some edges will be retained in the teeth itself. But whatever it is, it will adjust in the combination in such a way that it will be helpful for a longer life. So that is why we don't go for a usual method of gear hobbing or cutting out the material. We want the harder material to impinge and create a groove for itself and a space for itself, okay, so that the gear functioning will be smoother for its entire life of operation. And since the hardness and the softness is already mentioned, one thing is very clear from this, that even when during the design phase, we need not find which is the harder and which is the softer material, right? That was a requirement in spur gears and helical gears and bevel gears. We did sigma D1 Y1 and sigma D2 Y2 and found out among the pair which is a softer material. We designed it for that, and the harder one will automatically be taken care of. But here, since we have already declared that we are going to use a harder material for a worm and a softer material for a worm wheel, or also called as a gear, we need not go for again checking whether we need whether which is the weaker member or which is a harder member, okay, or a stronger member. We already know that the screw or the worm in itself along with the worm shaft is a harder material, so we design only for the gear. Now we don't go to design in the design phase. Of course we give the dimensions, but material wise we don't go to design anything for the worm. We design that is, the equations are designed used only for the softer gear wheel material. Now in spur gears and helical gears, we had a concept where the the teeth, the face width or the ratio was being maintained, and we had Z1 and Z2, that is, number of teeth on the pinion and number of teeth on the gear were exclusively mentioned. We know that Z2 in the softer gear wheel is something that we can define. We can count the number of teeth because it is almost resembling a spur gear. But what can you count on a worm? A worm just has a screw. It does not have a teeth in itself. It will not function as a teeth. Of course, when it rotates, it traverses and pushes the gear wheel itself. But at the same time, we cannot define it as a touch and go teeth or one set of teeth, the other adjacent teeth. It cannot be described. So how can we describe the Z1 and Z2 combination here? So we'll go to that theory part now. This is a designation that is used for describing a worm wheel. That is, as you can see here, Z1 slash Z2 slash Q slash M. So this four uh, numbers, okay, separated by a slash in between, this is the designation that is given for a pair of worm and a worm wheel. What is that? Individually we'll find out. Okay, let us know something that is we already are familiar with. M is the module, that is diameter by okay, number of teeth, that is what is described by M. Fine. Z2 is number of teeth on the worm wheel, so that is straight away defined. We have number of teeth on the worm wheel and we have M, that is module, which is described for a particular combination. Now, what about Z1? We know that you cannot just describe 1, 2, 3, 4 or any number of teeth just by counting, because we are dealing with a helical groove or a worm. Then what is Z1 here? Z1 means number of starts, or also called threads, on the worm. So this number of starts on the worm is as you can describe here, over here. This you have studied in your lower classes also, and maybe in one of your labs you are introduced to this. That is, what do you mean by number of starts? Okay, so here if I just describe it here, there are some figures that I have put up here. You see that thread length of one revolution. So if you have the lead, okay, the lead that is shown here, it is called, that is, if you rotate once and that is equal to the lead that is described over here, then we call it, or if it traverses by one pitch length, we call it a single start thread. Okay, and if it exceeds that, then it goes to double start and triple start. Okay, one of the examples I can give you is for double or triple start is that you rotate by a small amount, you rotate the wheel by a small amount, but the actual traverse of that particular arrangement or the mechanism will be much higher. What is the usual thing what that happens? You rotate once, it will traverse by one pitch length, and that we call a single start thread. Okay, and what happens when it is double or triple start? You rotate even by say 1/4 or one half of the rotation, just one half, and it will traverse more than the pitch length itself. Such threads are called as double start. So Z1 will be 2 in that case. Otherwise, it will be simply 1. Now, one of the examples I can give you is, you have uh, some of you might have also used that one kind of a pen, okay, where you have a pen which, okay, a pen with where you rotate the topmost cap, okay, the topmost section you rotate, and immediately the refill comes out. Okay, you rotate it back and the refill goes in back again. Okay, some of the good pens, okay, some premium pens I can say, use this concept, or also called luxury brand pens also. Okay, so you rotate it, it goes in, comes back. Now you won't expect people to keep on rotating 4 or 5 times and the nib to come out. So what can happen in such a case? Now the design is changed. What you do, you rotate only one half of rotation or 1/4 of the rotation, and the traverse of the nib is refill is high when compared to the rotation itself. Okay, so what has happened there? You are giving a mechanism inside where the number of starts on the thread has become more. Okay, so this is one extra thing that you can refer to in your from your lower classes also, lower semesters also, you can refer to the difference between now single start, double start and triple start. So similarly, the number of starts on the thread or the worm will help you to define, okay, this combination, how much faster the wheel is going to rotate. Final end product is the wheel that we want, right? That is the output that is required. So input is on the worm. So how it starts, that will determine how fast the wheel will rotate in the subsequent case. So Z1 and Z2. Okay. There's one more quantity called Q, diametrical quotient. So what is this? The ratio of the pitch diameter of the worm to the module. So it is given by D1 by M. So diametrical quotient is defined. So here pitch diameter of the worm, okay, I can describe this figure A here. So this is D1, okay, to the module of the arrangement. Okay, module is the common feature which helps us to attach that particular wheel with the worm. So module that is described both for the spur gear, okay, the spur gear means the worm wheel, that d1 by m is a diametral quotient that is given for this particular combination.
Sir,
Yeah.
sir, do we design for the shaft diameter of the worm?
No, no, no. We don't directly design for the shaft diameter. Uh, One thing, see, the design is based on worm wheel for most of the time. The reason, as I told you, this is softer material. Okay, most of the time this is softer material, but you will be given a choice that is in the design process, we are going to choose what is the type of thread, that is Z1. Is it a single start, double start? Is it quadruple start? Okay, we'll come to that. In the first problem itself, we'll be discussing that. Okay, number of starts, that is what we are going to describe. What is the diameter of that particular combination, that is D1, we are going to describe. Yes, core diameters, that is when it is a screw, you have two kinds of diameter here. Outer, that are outermost edge, that is described by D1 here, or also called the pitch diameter. Okay, and the innermost part, the core, as what you just now mentioned as shaft diameter. uh, there is a table of standard worm sizes that are given. So, from speaking from our perspective, as far as our syllabus is concerned, we are not going to touch on this matter. We are not going to touch on this matter. Of course, it is a very essential and a very serious matter, yes. But what we do is we take it from the standard table and see whether it satisfies our criterion. Okay, so we are not going to design separately anything over here. We are just going to take it. We know that this is somewhat like this. The grooves are here. Uh, we want to select a particular kind of a worm for a wheel and attach it. Okay,
Because I
but
was wondering, because if the shaft diameter is too small,
mm,
then the height of the tooth on the teeth on the worm will be too much, so that might damage. So I was thinking that way, like how do we design that shaft diameter or not?
no, no. Since this those diameters are already designed and already tabulated as a set of standard worms, dimensions of worms. Okay, so
Okay, sir.
we need not go and redesign them. Okay, shortly we'll come to that, because when discussing the first problem, I'll give you further inputs on it. Okay, where are the diameters? And there is actually three diameters. One is called reference. Okay, D1 being the pitch one. Okay, so actually I think this figure is slightly exaggerated. This is not a proper way to describe that. I would say this is the proper one. The pitch diameter described here is somewhat in, it is not even outside and inside, but somewhere over here. Okay, kind of an average. And this is the root diameter over here. This is the root diameter. I will say this is also, yeah, dr as described in your data handbook. It is dr. This is d1. Tip diameter is called outside diameter, also called tip diameter. Okay, this is also called tip diameter. So it's a combination. It's like one set of worm has its own tip diameter, has its own pitch diameter, has its own root diameter. Okay, so it is already described as a standard for all those starts and the diametral quotient. Okay, d1 by m. Fine. Yeah, this is just what I described. Lead, how we describe the single start and double start. Okay, axial pitch. Okay, let me start from the beginning. Axial pitch, distance measured from a point on one thread to the corresponding point on the adjacent thread measured along the axis of the worm. So axial pitch, or simply called pitch, it is from one point, for example, from here to here. This is pitch, or from here to here. So everything remains the same. Okay, that is the axial pitch. Lead, distance that a point on the helical profile will move when the worm is rotated through one revolution. So you give one revolution, how much it will move. That is what I was describing earlier. If it is a thread advance in one turn, single start threads, lead is equal to the pitch. So L is equal to P in this case for single start. Okay. For Z1 equal to 1, then you have I would say like this, for Z1 equal to 1, L is equal to P. Okay, and for Z1 equal to 2, okay, for double starts, lead is twice the axial pitch. L is equal to 2 times pitch. So you rotate only once, but the axial transverse of the screw would be 2 times the pitch length. Fine. Other two angles are described here. This is also little important when it comes to the load holding capacity and the traverse. Lead angle. Angle between a tangent to the thread at the pitch diameter and a plane normal to the worm axis. So I think you can see that here. Is it described here? Yeah. Worm lead angle gamma and gear helix angle psi. They are more measured on the pitch surfaces. Angle between a tangent to the thread at the pitch diameter and a plane normal to the worm axis. So that is meant by the lead angle. And helix angle, angle between a tangent to the thread at the pitch diameter and the axis of the worm. So one is described with respect to this. Okay, I would say this as the gamma, and angle between a tangent to the thread at the pitch diameter and the axis of the worm. So this will be its axis of the worm is coming here. So this would be its, I think I need a better figure for this. Okay, gamma is here, can't be described. Okay, so gamma and psi. Yeah, you can see that here. Okay, this is the one is called as a helix angle and one is called as the lead angle. When we understand this lead angle and helix angle, uh, what is the importance of this? Okay, we'll discuss that using one of those problems. Okay, I think that will be a proper point to discuss over there. Okay, so other things I just mentioned. We have also seen some of the self-locking drives. That is, a gear is said to be self-locking, a combination is said to be self-locking when the coefficient of friction is greater than the tangent of the lead angle. So again, the lead angle has a prominence here. Coefficient of friction greater than uh, gamma, that is the tangent of the lead angle, we call it self-locking. What is the concept of self-locking? I have explained in the previous lecture itself that usually the worm only rotates the worm wheel. Worm wheel in turn cannot rotate the worm. So such a possible drives are called as self-locking drives. If a worm wheel is able to rotate the worm back, okay, the reverse drive is possible. This is called non-self-locking, okay, also called reversible drives. Why it is required? Of course, we would go with self-locking drive because we want to prevent something from happening. But sometimes, if the load is too high, it is highly unpredictable, it is safer to have a reversible drive so that it will prevent the damage to the drive. If the load is very high, then it is catastrophic damage, or the teeth will simply get fatigued and cut out and come out of the system itself. So that is why we don't want failure to happen excessively. So both are, I would say, both are extensively used, but wherever there are critical applications, of course, when we never want the drive to fail, then or prevent the damage to the drive is really an issue, then we will go for a reversible drive. If it is for smaller applications, we can go for a self-locking drive, where we know, where we have control over the loading mechanism. Okay. One of the parts that we would like to understand here is that we know that a screw traverses over the gear. So one thing is for sure, that there's a lot of heat getting generated. A lot of heat is generated because the worm gears continuously rub against. Yeah. I think, yeah, sorry. Okay, just had to respond to a message. Yeah. So when the worm gears continuously operate, considerable amount of heat is generated. So you have constant rubbing of one surface over different sets of teeth. Though the teeth will get some amount of time to come back and re-engage again, the worm in itself is subjected to a lot of heat because the same surface is getting rubbed again and again. Okay, so it's considerable amount of heat is generated. The amount of heat generated is given by this equation. Q is equal to mu Fn Vr by cos gamma, where gamma is the lead angle, mu is the coefficient of friction, Fn is a normal force vector, and Vr refers to the rubbing velocity, or we would say a relative velocity between the two surfaces that are rubbing. Okay, that is why it is Vr, or also called rubbing velocity. Now the heat dissipated through the lubricating oil to the housing wall and finally to the surrounding air. So whatever Q is generated, you want to liberate it to the surroundings. Either using, okay, if it is ambient air, then of course you need to keep it some artificial cooling method. Otherwise, of course, you would rather have it dipped in an oil, right? A lubricating oil. But oil also has its own characteristics. You would like to select an oil and also see that the oil is continuously lubricated and the heat is continuously getting removed. So, for that purpose, we have the relationship between the temperature difference, that is the ambient, and what is finally generated. There is a cross-sectional area where the heat is getting liberated. Just now, one of you mentioned that there is a core diameter. Yes, that also will bear a very high effect on how the heat is getting dissipated, because finally some component has to give out the heat. There has to be conduction at first. Once conduction occurs, then the convection in the lubricating oil will start. Okay, so that will also have, so this Ag, Aw, these are all the surfaces of the combination or the material that is over there. Okay, next, if the, what we suggest, of course it is also followed elsewhere also, that if the heat dissipated is less than the heat generated, this is what usually happens, then the following artificial cooling methods can be adopted. What are the artificial cooling methods? On the worm shaft itself, we will provide a fan. So fan will remove the heat on a constant basis. It is something like how a radiator works. A radiator has a fan, so it will touch the surface and provide a streamlined air passing over it. There is heat exchange, and so the entire system is cooled. So in a similar way, you place a fan over the worm shaft itself. Next, by incorporating fins horizontally along the stream of air. If you are unable to provide a fan, then what we can do is you arrange fins on it, okay, along the stream of the air, so that the heat is removed from the system itself. Okay. So this is regarding the thermal considerations in worm gearing. Let us take this first problem and try to solve it. We'll discuss some of the standard sizes of worms and which tables to refer to. Yeah. So I think you've taken down the problem. We'll discuss it slowly, step by step. So a hardened steel worm rotating at 1750 RPM. So let me write down the data. N1 is 1750 RPM. Transmits power to a phosphor bronze gear having 20-degree involute profile. So a gear having 20-degree involute profile. So alpha is still 20-degree. Okay. With a transmission ratio of 10:1. So I is equal to 10:1. Center distance is 200 mm. So this is one very important factor for us to consider. Till now, center distance was not a huge issue when we did spur gear, helical and bevel gear, but here it becomes very prominent. Okay, so nomenclature according to your data handbook is A. So A is 200 mm. So determine the power rating from the standpoint of strength. So we'll determine what is the power rating. So this is the question. How much power can be transmitted with such a gear? Okay. One of the foremost things we know that, okay, speed is given, speed ratio is given. We are very quick to write one relationship. I is equal to, we know that it is N1 by N2, agreed, speed ratio, Z2 by Z1, this is also agreed. But the question is it equal to D1 by D2? Or I would say D2 by D1. If you look at the combination here, is it D2 by D1? Is this true? Okay, can you guess D2 by D1? Is it true? You have a very small worm wheel rotating a very large worm wheel. Is it equal to this combination? Okay, or this ratio D2 by D1? Yeah. So this is true that N1 by N2 speed ratio it is, or also called transmission ratio. This is also equal to, as we told and we described, that Z1 refers to the number of starts. So that is also taken care in this Z2 by Z1, which helps us to understand. Sorry?
It will be equal.
No, actually it won't be equal. Here, this is not equal to D2 by D1.
How, sir?
Because you can have a very small worm wheel. See, in all other cases, what happened? You had engaging teeth. One-to-one engagement was there with all the teeth. Okay? Whether it was spur or helical, so one-to-one engagement was there. And that one-to-one engagement with its module gave rise to this equation, that is transmission ratio was there. But now the type of engagement itself is different. Okay, the rotating screw may be very small. Okay, and this you can make it very large. Okay, so I would say like, as far as your question is concerned, see, these are two different axes on which it is rotating, completely two different axes, and there is no proper one-to-one engagement between the teeth. It's just a screw rotating on its axis, and because of the rubbing velocity, because of the rubbing action between those grooves, you have each end of the tooth getting pushed subsequently by the next groove that is coming in and adjoining here. And this D1 by D2 combination does not hold good for its ratio, okay, for its D1, D2 by D1. So there is D1. So obviously D1 is lesser than D2. This is agreed. This is obvious. There is no doubt about it. But as far as the transmission ratio is concerned, it will not hold good for 10:1 or any ratio that is given. It is true in the case of speed. It is true in the case of Z, that is teeth to number of starts on the worm wheel itself, but it is not true in the case of diameters. So this is one very important conclusion, students. Always you have to remember N1 by N2 equal to Z2 by Z1 equal to D2 by D1 is valid only for spur, helical and bevel gears. It is not valid for worm gears. Okay, there is no continuous engagement of the teeth just as in other cases, and you cannot describe that the diameters will have a proportional effect on the speed transmission ratio. Okay, so your equation will be limited to only this value. Okay, I would write it separately so that will not confuse it. I is not equal to d2 by d1. Always remember that in worm gearing.
Sir, you said continuous engagement. I'm still not getting that point. So, like, where is the discontinuity in the transmission? Like, there is a constant contact between the worm and the worm wheel. I mean,
Yes, yes. No, no. I'm not saying that there is disengagement in there, but the point is that see, whenever you said there is d1 and d2, the speed ratio. Now here I would rather say like this. See, this refers to number of starts, right? In all other cases, what happened? We know that z is equal to d by m. Z is equal to d by m if the gearing was spur, if it was helical, if it was bevel or similar type. Okay. Now this is fine. For the numerator Z2 it is fine because Z2 is equal to D2 by M because this refers to a worm wheel. It is essentially a spur gear. It is a slightly modified version of a spur gear. That's it. I would say it is essentially a spur gear itself because when we design, we use the spur gear equations. But what about Z1? Z1, it is not a teeth at all. It is a screw. So here Z1 is not equal to D1 by M. Please understand that Z1 is not equal to D1 by M. So that is why you cannot have that ratio D2 by D1.
okay, okay.
Yeah. Fine.
Sir, one more thing in this is that
Uh,
in the normal in the spur helical and bevel gears,
uh,
we were equating the velocities, tangential velocities, which is pi d1 n1 equal to pi d2 n2. That is
yes,
why
yes.
pi d2 by pi d1 was giving d2 by d1, which was the velocity ratio.
Hmm.
In worm gears, that velocity itself is not same, I guess.
Hmm.
I mean,
Yes.
like you cannot express the
Correct.
velocity, I guess, of the
Correct.
worm in terms of uh, pi and some diameter. That is why it is not
Yes,
the
yes,
gear.
yes. You're right in that sense also. Yes. See, suppose say we describe whether it is a spur, helical or bevel. Okay, let us take it at spur for simplicity. If it's rotating like this, the velocity v has to be constant at this particular point. Okay. Actually, this is a velocity v linear velocity. When d1 engages over here and d2 tooth engages over here, both have the same velocity. Both have the same velocity at this particular point. If they don't have the same velocity, there can't be any positive drive or engagement. But in this case, what we have seen, you have a screw, you have something engaging with it. Here at this case, there are two V's. This is V1 belonging to the worm and this is V2. The difference between these two gives rise to VR, something called rubbing velocity. Okay, and that is why this D1 by D2 transmission or that ratio will not hold good. Okay. Good attempt, students. You have taken this very nicely. So this is a very important concept to be learned from worm wheel. Okay, don't simply blindly put that it is also equal to d2 by d1. Fine. Now let us understand that if you have so much, okay, let me clear that first. Yeah. So with this in mind, now with the information given, how can I describe what should be the diameter? See here again in this problem, you have RPM given, you have a transmission ratio given, you have center distance given. But just because center distance is given, you just cannot blindly take, okay, let me take any diameter we want. We would like to have some reference as a diameter. Okay, so you can, what we can understand from this problem is what will be the velocity with which we have to run the combination. That is one thing. And the velocity ratio given, okay, the velocity transmission ratio is also called as velocity ratio. Okay, let me describe that. Velocity ratio V is nothing but I itself here. Okay, I is equal to 10. Why I am stressing on this velocity ratio factor is because in table 12.28, okay, the worm data is given over there, 12.28b, based on page 244, based on worm data, that is based on velocity ratio, you have the number of threads to be put in a worm. Now with a velocity ratio of 10, which are the possible alternatives you have, you can choose from. See, in that table data, as you can see, 12.28b in worm data, velocity ratio 20 and over, you have single thread worm, single number of threads in worm, you can say single start. Okay, then 12 to 16 you have double start, 8 to 12 you have triple start. So we are in that range, 10 range. So 8 to 12 you have triple start, 6 to 12 there is one more combination called quadruple. You have one more also called sextuple, where 6 threads will start the drive at once. So that also comes in the range 4 to 10. Always remember, we have to start from the lowest end. Okay, from the lowest end we'll start. How about we start from the triple one? Triple, is it good for us? Yes, all three are good. Let us start from the lowest one. Now, when you start that, you have to keep in mind one more reference, table 12.29. Next page, that is 245, page number 245. You see, with the number of starts, I think we have to refer something here. Hold on, students. Actually, yeah. Based on this page 245, you see there are 8 columns over there. In table 2.29, you have 8 columns. First column is called module, second column is called axial pitch, third is called number of starts, fourth is diametrical quotient, that is Q1 by M, D1 by M it is, and reference diameter is D1. Okay, the actual diameter is D1. And there is tip and root diameter, which is not that necessary here. Even lead angle is also not that necessary for our calculation as of now. So which one to take here? Now there are so many combinations here. Module, it starts with module 1, then go from 1.25, then 1.5, 2, 2.5, 3, 4, 5, 6, 8, and so on. It goes on till next page module called 20. So many, hello, some disturbance here. So please mute your mics if you're not asking any question. Okay. So you can choose any one of them, but remember your center distance is around 200 mm. Your center distance is around 200 mm. Okay, so it is quite large. It is not something very small where you have 10, 20, 30 as your diameter, but it actually is quite large when compared. So to help with that, we will calculate the approximate diameter at first. Okay, approximate diameter. Approximate diameter according to empirical relationship. According to empirical relationship, and try to match with these two tables. And for that, there is one very simple formula that is given on page 223. On page 223. According to AGMA, American Gear Manufacturers Association, it recommends a mean pitch diameter D1 is equal to A to the power 0.875 divided by 1.466. This is formula 12.51E. According to AGMA, okay, they, for speed reducers for worms, you have a pitch worm diameter D1 is equal to A to the power 0.875. Now what is this formula giving us? It gives a relationship between the worm diameter D1 or pitch diameter D1 to the center distance A. With center distance so much, the minimum pitch diameter should be around the range of this D1, whatever value you are getting. Because we have nothing to start with here, okay? We have nothing to start with. We are using this as the reference. So D1 will be equal to 200 to the power 0.875 divided by 1.466. So how much this comes out to be? Equal to
70.35.
yes, you are getting 70.35 as your minimum diameter that is required. Okay, recommends a mean pitch diameter around this range 70.35. Now if this is something minimum or that is absolutely required, then whatever you choose should have a value higher than this D1. Now come to table 12.29. Under this table 12.29, page 245, okay, you have to match, see, number of starts. See, triple means what? Triple means Z1 is 3, quadruple means Z1 is 4, and sextuple means 6. Okay, got the point now? Triple means 3, quadruple means 4, sextuple means 6. Now, out of this range, you see column number 3 here. Okay, column 3, the number of starts Z1, you have to match that, okay, whether it is 3, 4 and 6. But 3, you are not going to get it anywhere. 3 is totally ruled out. The reason being 3 is not described for any of the standard sizes. 3 is not at all available. Okay, for our purpose 3 is not available. So what we do is we'll rule out this 3. We don't want to use 3. Can we use 4? Yes, you can use 4. 4 and 6 both are available, and our tendency is to go for the lowest one. We'll go for the fourth one, that is quadruple thread. But out of 4, which one you are going to choose? There are 4 starting from module of 2. Now which module will you choose? Whether you will choose 2, will you choose 2.5, 3, 4 or any other number? How to understand that? So this D1 will help you with that. So Z1 equal to 4 we are choosing now. Okay, we'll try to fit that with the diameter around 70.35 and above that. Now even you go for that, your D1 diameter here greater than 71.5, the only option available to you with Z1 equal to 4 is 80. Yes, this is the last thing that you can do. Below that it is 60, so it is much lesser than that. It is not safe. So now then we don't want to go for the 6th start thread, the sextuple. We don't want to use that because not necessary to use this many. We will go with quadruple. Okay, 6 to 12. Why we went for that? because 3 is not available readily in the table. That is one part. Second, this 4 will immediately satisfy with the diameter that we have empirically calculated using AGMA formula. So Z1 is 4, D1 is 80. Look at other things, what we can use there. Okay, so if of course these are two very important things. Other things are not necessary for us to find out as of now. Of course, the lead angle and all we will be discussing in the later part. So understand this particular step. Using AGMA, we found out a reference diameter. We matched it to the diameter from the table and also matched it to the proper start of the thread using the velocity ratio. So all this together work together to choose a proper combination. Fine. Now, if Z1 is 4 and D1 is 80, let us write this down in the next slide. Okay, according to that, what is the module? I forgot about the module itself. This is very important. Module is 8. Correct? Module is 8. Yeah, module is 8. Now, with this in mind, then with M as 8, Z1, which is the number of start, is 4. D1 you are described to be 80. What about Z2? Z2 we know it is I times Z1. This we have proved. Okay, I times Z1. So here what happens? This is 80. Z2 is 40. Okay, I'm just describing it as a table. What are the things that we need now? Let me put it as a table form. Yes. What about D2? D2 is M into Z2. D2 is M into Z2. Why? Because the worm wheel is a spur gear. So D2 is equal to M into Z2. So here how much? 8 into 40, 320. And finally, A, which is the center distance, this is true. D1 by D2, D1 plus D2 by 2 is true in this case of any gear. Okay, the center distance is half of the addition of the half of the diameters is true. So when you do this, how much is this? Guess.
200.
Yes, exactly what we required. Center distance is 200. So this is one combination that will satisfy all the requirements of the given problem. Okay, we have come back to that same original center distance of 200. Okay, we have taken care of the number of starts. Fine, with the based on number of starts only, your 40 has come Z2, and that Z2 gave rise to 320, which has finally brought us to the center distance of 200. So students, I
Excuse
think,
me, sir.
yeah.
Sir, I didn't understand why we took number of starts as 4. Why can't we take it lesser than that?
If you take, you have to refer to the previous table, 12 point, where is that? Okay, students, okay, let me just give me 1 minute because,
12.28b, right, sir?
hold on. 12 point, yeah, 12.28b, yes. Double start range is, see, let me go back. Double start range is above this here, 12 to 16. But our value is 10. It does not fit here. Double start does not fit. 12 to 10 is this velocity ratio, right? 12,
Okay, sir.
13, 14, 15, 16, you can fit it here. 10 will fit only in these three. Got it? Out of
Yes,
these
sir.
three, we eliminated the lowest one because there was no combination available. We went for 4, we found it to be satisfactory. 6 is not needed here. Okay, 6 is not needed. Yeah. Okay, students, I think it's
Yes,
time
sir.
for,
Understood.
yeah. I think it is time for your assignment, that is quiz. Now, see that you have proper internet connections. Of course, you can join later also. There is no problem of breaking your connection. But see that you submit by 3:30. Okay. See that you submit by 3:30. Because after 3:30, the link will close and you cannot submit any responses.